Hey everyone, welcome on to Branded. This week's episode, we're talking about mistakes and how they could very well be the most original work you've ever done. So we're basically taking mistakes, we're flipping them upside down, and we're thinking about them a little bit differently because there's so many things that we come across in life that are unexpected, unplanned, not what we were intending to do. And how frequently do we allow those mistakes to sort of just be a blip in, our journey? What if those mistakes were actually versions of the most original work we've ever done? And I thought that this was a really fun concept because instead of us like him hawing about, oh gosh, I made another mistake, how do I get through it? And instead of talking about it from that side of the conversation, I kind of want to reframe it a little bit. So, as we start this episode, the first question I want to ask is what if the last mistake that you made was actually the most original thing that you've created in months? What if? I think it's really cool to think about this. And so in today's episode, we're going to sort of talk about how most of what we create day to day is simply just a remix and a repeat of the things that we already know, the things that we have already created, and how beautiful it can be when we do go off script and we find ourselves in completely new territory that saying like, oh shit, I just made a mistake. But what if instead of, oh shit, I just made a mistake, it's like, oh shit, I just stumbled upon something totally brand new that I've never created before, right? So seeing it differently and reframing it, there's so much power in it. And also, it's just fun and interesting because why not talk about it in that way? Why not talk about mistakes in that way and embrace them in that way? Because let's be honest, I'm going to continue to make mistakes for the rest of my life, and you probably will too. So, let's start with the concept of like we create from what we know. This is true. This is a true statement whether you have done any kind of like mindset work and meditation and all of that stuff. This is true for you no matter if you've done any of that kind of work. It's just a fact of life that we're creatures of pattern, we're creatures of habit. And so, whether it's designing your brand, writing a book, starting your business, it doesn't really matter what the task is at hand. We create from our memories, we create from what we've been taught. We create from the experiences that we've had, the examples that we've seen around us. It's very, very rare that our brains create something entirely new that has never existed before. It's just the way we're wired, that we essentially recreate things that we know. But that's the beauty of imagination and like playfulness is that, yes, creating from pattern and sort of remixing the things that we already know, it's super efficient, right? Like that model of creation is incredibly efficient. Someone built a bridge for the first time ever, and now there are bridges all over the world because it was so much easier for the second, third, thousandth bridge to be built, right? But that first one, that was hard because it took so much imagination, stretching the possibility of what is and what everyone has been told is possible, right? And that's as true today as it ever was. Creation is something that is very, very hard to come by, like true creation, because we're constantly just sort of repeating and remixing the things that we have already seen. So here's a really good example of how we do this probably every single day without even realizing it. Cooking dinner. Think about how many different dinners a week do you cook if you're someone that cooks dinners. So for me, like I will cook the same meals week to week. Every now and then I'll sprinkle in like one or two new things, but for the most part, when I'm grocery shopping, when I'm ready to start cooking something, my brain is automatically thinking of what's familiar? What do I already know the ingredients of? What do I already know how to make? I don't have to look up anything. What do I have in the fridge, right? So we start to repeat these patterns, and something like cooking your nightly dinner, it's such a great way to like really see how obvious it is that we are repeating ourselves day in and day out. And that's okay. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. What we're talking about today is those sort of one-off occurrences that we label as mistakes, when in reality, they could quite literally be the most original thing that you've done in months. So, whenever you sort of find yourself veering off course, and instead of berating yourself with guilt that you're not doing something right, like quote unquote right, it's okay, because maybe what you're actually doing is something entirely new. And you're never really going to know if it's like supposed to be part of your continued journey until you kind of just allow it to express itself. Because not all mistakes actually bring things to a screeching halt. Most mistakes, if you really like think about the things that you have considered mistakes in your life and you look back on, what do we tend to look back on them with? A little bit of gratitude and like reverence, like, wow, that was hard when I was dealing with it, but I'm so glad that I did, because now I have this additional wisdom. Now I have this know how of getting through XYZ. And so, why not, when you're actually experiencing the so called mistake, why not see it as something that is like full of possibility, that maybe it's actually something totally freaking new, and that's really cool. So, if you've ever like tried to, start from scratch with, let's say, your nightly dinners, you probably still pull from ingredients that you know, a pot or a pan that's really familiar to you. This is actually something, speaking of dinners, we have two different sets of like pots and pans, one of them stainless steel, the other piece of junk. I find myself reaching for the piece of junk cookware more frequently than the stainless steel cookware, because it's more familiar to me, and because I feel less like I have to take care of it when I'm cooking or cleaning it. And that's just like one of those mindset things that I really need to reframe and tell myself, like, it's okay to cook with the better cookware. And it's okay if at some point down the road I end up ruining that cookware, because what did I buy it for? To cook with it, not for it to just sit in the cabinet. So these are things I'm constantly reminding myself of too. And that's why these episodes, I just love doing them, because honestly, this isn't just about me and my business. This is so relatable to everything that anybody's going through right now. So we're going to talk a little bit about how going off course from what you sort of expected to do, it really can be the thing that changes the course of your journey, especially if you're feeling a little bit stuck. So, what happens when something doesn't go as planned? Like, what do you typically do next? Do you completely shut down and you're like, well, this didn't work, so I'm just not going to try again? Do you set it aside and try it again and try to achieve the thing you were trying to do? Or do you embrace the sort of messier result and see what that looks like? How can that actually be expressed and used in what I'm trying to create? Something I do, staying on sort of the cooking lane, something I do with cooking, yeah, I might find myself cooking some of the same meals over and over, but never do I follow a recipe. I never do the same thing twice. Like if I'm making tacos, I never make tacos the exact same way twice, because I'm always sort of in the moment feeling, what do I feel like adding to this dish? Oh, this sounds good. What does my body feel like eating? Does it want it to be super spicy today? Do we want something a little more mellow? In your business can be exactly the same way. right? You can sort of reach for similar colors that make you feel safe. A template structure that's like, okay, I always use this template when I'm creating this thing because it makes me feel confident that I can continue to create the thing I'm trying to make. I get it. I do that too, right? And this episode isn't about not doing those things. Instead, it's about embracing when you do those things, but something entirely unexpected comes from it. Is it really a mistake? So, one of the beautiful things about mistakes is that they actually interrupt that like autopilot that we're just always on, right? We're always on the move, we're always on this autopilot. And when we make a mistake, we very abruptly are like, whoa, okay, we just hit this roadblock. And now my autopilot has sort of been disoriented and it kind of shakes you up a little bit, right? It shakes up your thinking, gets your cortisol levels a little bit up, and you're like, whoa, what did I just do? Did I just do something really terrible or did I just do something really fucking amazing? It gets you into this very specific moment where you kind of have this like pure potential of this ability of it could go any way. And so instead of like seeing a mistake and being like, ugh, again, I cannot find the exact replica of what I created a year ago. Because remember, that's what we're doing. We're repeating and remixing the things that we've already done. And so when you find yourself like feeling this guilt over not creating the thing that you meant to create, and it's like, yeah, but haven't you already created that? Didn't you probably already create that? So it's okay if it's something new. It's okay if it's something unexpected. A mistake can lead to a better idea, a brand new offer, a whole pivot in your brand, right? A mistake can lead to some really cool things. We might call it a misstep or a failure or, a little detour off course, but it's actually that moment of like original creation, which is just so neat to think about. It makes me excited to be like, when am I going to make my next mistake? I don't know, maybe that's just me. But I find it to be really exciting and a little bit interesting to be like, wow, what's the next mistake I'm going to make? Because what is it going to show me? And having that reframe of mindset around what my mistakes and my failures used to look like and what they are now, oh my gosh, it like changes everything. And it really shifts how much anxiety and that self imposed guilt that I place on myself. I really don't have all of that as much anymore. I still get it, of course, but it doesn't happen as frequently and it doesn't happen for like as long, right? I used to have these really long stretches of anxiety where, like, an entire day, I would essentially just be spinning out with my stress and my anxiety because I could not set it down. I couldn't see through to the other side of it that it's okay if I didn't achieve exactly the thing I tried to do. So, something that doesn't come from your past but comes from your right now, a gut feeling, an emotion, this sort of intuitive nature that you have. Like, how fucking cool is that? That you're creating something from your present, not from your past, not from something you've already experienced or some conditioned belief that maybe you're stuck on autopilot believing, but it's not really yours to believe. Interesting, right? So, how do we reframe failure? This is how I kind of like to think of it. I think of failure as almost like it's like a bridge where you had this old pattern and then you were taking steps along the way to achieve something, create something, do something, be something, whatever, right? You are becoming. You have this old pattern and now you're becoming. Well, you get to the other side and you realize this wasn't actually the path that you intended to be on, But what failure tends to do for us is it kind of forges and creates these paths for us because we're only ever recreating what we know. And so when you find yourself smack dab in the middle of something like failure, mistake, unexpected, it quite literally is a brand new path that is like only for you. Only you actually get to see that. And so reframing it as like this bridge that helps you kind of burn off these old patterns that used to be there so you can see things a little bit differently, have a new perspective, have a little insight and wisdom to it. So the next time something is like going wrong, maybe pause and ask yourself, like, what is the actual possibility and opportunity that's here? Rather than me saying, oh, fuck, I just made a mistake. It's like, wait a second. I just did something I didn't expect to do, but maybe that's a good thing. Let me dig into this a little bit. Let me see if this is interesting to me, if I want to keep exploring this. And you'll start to notice that when you make these mistakes, go off course a little bit, that you become curious about them rather than feeling frustrated by them. Huge. Here's a really good example. When I was doing some research on this episode to help kind of just like build it out and what I was going to talk about, I came across this example and I was like, whoa, that's so good. So if you guys are familiar with Jackson Pollock, it's like those splatter paintings, right? Well, Jackson Pollock, supposedly, this is the story, that the iconic drip paintings from Jackson Pollock, they were a total mistake. It was from a paint spill. So, like, an entire history of art and culture was shaped in a way by someone's mistake, by sort of looking back, stepping back and looking at the spilled paint on canvas and going, huh, interesting. You know, maybe this wasn't what I was trying to do, but maybe what I was trying to do was too safe. Maybe what I was trying to do was too much of the same of what I've already done. And so I just thought that was a really cool concept because I think so many of us are familiar with those sort of splatter drip paintings from Jackson Pollock. I mean, you see them in like hotels and all sorts of stuff. They're like standard in so many types of offices or spaces around the world. And it all came from a mistake. So think about this. Your mistake could be the birthplace of something truly fresh and new. You never know. So, what I like to do is when I make a mistake, or what I think is a mistake, right? I like to start noticing the patterns that I have. Like, what am I creating without even realizing it? Something like your nightly dinners, great place to start. If you want to look at your brand or your business, take a look at like your Canva templates or where you start from when you go to create a piece of content. Are you literally creating something on repeat without even ever realizing that you're doing it? The dinners that I cook, definitely. Adam is so much better at being spontaneously creative. That's like his jam. He actually likes going grocery shopping with zero plan, zero list. And he literally just sees the ingredients that are at the grocery store that look really good. And then he's like, oh, well, this is a beautiful head of cauliflower. I'm going to make a meal around this. Oh, this is a gorgeous baguette. I'm going to make a meal around this. And I'm like, whoa, his creativity is so different than mine. And it's very cool to see it in action. But I know that I create from a place of sameness when it comes to my dinners. Like I can remember vividly as a child, I had like the same 3, 4 dinners every week for years. But we were super broke and my mom did her best and I was fed. So, I never thought anything of it until now I'm older and I'm like, trying to create new things and not constantly be repeating my past. But that is very, very much something we do. We have these patterns and we stick to them. So one of the first things I would do, if this is interesting to you and you're like, okay, I want to see what this is like to sort of see my mistakes a little differently, is start noticing your patterns. Start noticing what are you creating without even realizing it. And then what I would do next is embrace the detour, welcome it, be okay with something different being presented to you. And this takes practicing some curiosity, right? It's not about just like, okay, awesome, accept I welcome the detour. And you just sort of sit back and like, no. Be curious about it, because that's how you sort of find your way through this new path that has never been explored before by anybody, right? You're the first person there. And that's what's so interesting about this. And so welcoming the detour means being very curious about when something doesn't go as planned and really trying to see all facets of it. Think of your task at hand as like a dice. Like it's one die, right? And it's got all these different sides to it. You may only be seeing one side of that die. But what if you were to flip it? What's on the other side? Is there an entirely new direction, approach, offer, whatever? There's all these dimensions to what you're creating, and none of them are really a mistake. Some of them are just unexpected. Lastly, what I would do is create something like, and this doesn't have to be weekly because this is honestly a lot harder than it looks, practicing sort of this curiosity and acceptance of our mistakes. But something that really has helped me is creating something every week with like no plan. And what do I mean by this? I mean, like, you don't start with a Pinterest board. You're not starting with some sort of Canva template. You start with just a blank page. You start with nothing in front of you. And this is honestly how I come up with my podcast. I create something new with no plan every week. It's the podcast. Now, during that creation process, there are tools that I use along the way, right? But the original creation is me just sitting down and thinking very intentionally, what's something that's been on my mind recently? What's something that I feel passionate enough to have a conversation about? And so that's why sometimes these podcast episodes, I might batch record them and they might all be around a certain topic because maybe I've got travel coming up or whatever, and I need to be a little more like structured with how I put content out. But other times, like today, I was just thinking about mistakes and how actually like interesting and curious I am about them now and why that is, because I used to be terrified of it. You know, being an ex-gymnast and having that mentality of like being in competition mode, not with other people, but with myself constantly, having that sort of sense of perfectionism constantly, that it has taken me years and I'm still working on it to unlearn some of these things, which served me very well whenever I was a competitive gymnast as, you know, a teenager. Those qualities don't serve me now. They create more anxiety. They create more self-doubt. They create like less confidence. And so I'm unlearning these things, and mistakes are one of them. I make them all the time. And instead of beating myself up about it, I now am just curious about it. I'm like, okay, so I did a thing that I wasn't trying to do, but instead of throwing it away, scrapping it, and saying, like, well, I guess I'm not good at this anymore. No, instead, I'm like, why is this different? Why is this the way this website turned out when I was intending for it to kind of go in this direction? Maybe it's even better than I expected. And so sometimes, like your intuitive nature, when you really let yourself sort of get into the flow of things, you'll start to see that like these little unexpected things will crop up more and more and more because they're coming from like the purest place of creation that you've ever really allowed yourself to experience before, because you're not just recreating from things that you know. It's very cool. So the next time you find yourself off course, whether it's in your brand, it's in your messaging, maybe you're trying to make like a big move, just remember you might be stepping into the most original work you've ever done. And that's really freaking cool. So if this resonated with you, share it with a friend. Of course, leave a review. It always helps this message just be spread more and more, so more people can hear it. But you truly can't create things without getting a little lost first, and that's okay. So go get a little lost, go get a little curious, make the mistakes, because you very well might be making something totally brand new, and that's exciting. I'll see you next week's episode. Bye, guys. Thank you so much for listening to Branded, the podcast. Please rate and review, and for more information, visit socialjanemedia.com.